A single barge can carry thousands of tons of cargo across a river, and every time it moves that cargo, its owner can collect thousands of dollars. So at first, owning a barge sounds like an incredibly simple business. Buy a vessel, load it with cargo, move it from one port to another, get paid. But there's a problem. That massive steel box floating on the water is constantly costing you money, even when it isn't moving. So how much does a barge actually make? And more importantly, how much does the owner actually keep? Let's break down the economics of owning a barge. Before a barge makes any money, you have to buy one. And unlike a normal business, your main asset isn't a building, a website, or a few pieces of equipment. It's a massive floating piece of steel. There are different types of barges, depending on what they're designed to carry. Some transport dry bulk cargo like grain, coal, sand, and construction materials. Others carry liquids, and some are designed to transport containers or specialized equipment. The price can vary enormously, depending on the vessel's size, age, design, and condition. A smaller used barge might cost hundreds of thousands of dollars, while larger or specialized vessels can cost millions. And that's where the first major economic challenge appears. Your money is tied up in an asset that doesn't generate revenue by simply sitting there. A barge only makes money when someone is paying you to use it. There are two basic ways. You can operate the vessel yourself and transport cargo for customers, or you can lease the barge to another company and let them operate it. The second option can be simpler, but the first can potentially generate more revenue. Imagine you own a dry cargo barge. A customer needs thousands of tons of construction material transported along a river. Instead of buying their own vessel, they hire you. You provide the barge, and depending on the arrangement, the transportation service, crew, and other operational requirements. Now the economics become interesting, because you're not selling the cargo, you're selling transportation capacity. The more efficiently you can move that capacity, the more money you can make. This is one of the most important things to understand. The product isn't actually the vessel. The product is moving cargo reliably from point A to point B. If your barge can carry 10,000 tons but spends half the year sitting idle, its theoretical capacity doesn't matter. That's why utilization is everything. Imagine your barge generates an average of $20,000 in revenue during a paid trip. If you complete 100 profitable trips in a year, that's $2 million in annual revenue. Sounds incredible. But there's a catch. Those $2 million aren't profit. Not even close. Because the river business has a long list of expenses, and some of them are surprisingly large. If your barge is self-propelled, fuel becomes a major operating expense. Every trip consumes fuel, and fuel prices can change. But here's something interesting. Many barges aren't self-propelled at all. They're basically massive floating cargo platforms that need tugboats to move them. That means the economics can involve another business entirely. You may need a tugboat operator to move your barge, and every hour the tug is working costs money. So suddenly, transportation isn't just cargo to barge to customer. It's more like cargo to barge to tugboat to crew to port to customer. Every step can take a piece of the revenue. A commercial vessel needs people. Depending on the type of operation, you may need captains, deckhands, engineers, maintenance workers, and other personnel. And unlike a normal employee sitting in an office, maritime workers operate specialized equipment in a potentially dangerous environment. That means labor isn't cheap, and you don't just pay salaries. There can also be training, certifications, insurance, accommodations, payroll taxes, and other employment costs. So even if your barge generates hundreds of thousands of dollars in revenue, a significant portion can disappear before you ever reach profit. Now we get to one of the biggest hidden costs: maintenance. A barge may look simple from the outside. It's basically a huge steel structure. But that doesn't mean it's maintenance-free. Steel corrodes. Engines need servicing. Pumps fail. Equipment wears out. Hull inspections are required. And eventually, major repairs become unavoidable. The worst part? Maintenance doesn't always happen when it's convenient. A serious repair can take your vessel out of service. And while the barge isn't generating revenue, the bills don't stop. You can still have financing costs, insurance, storage or docking expenses, administrative costs, and other overhead. This creates one of the biggest risks in the entire business: downtime. Let's say your barge could theoretically generate $2 million per year. But because of weather, maintenance, weak demand, port delays, mechanical problems, and scheduling issues, it's only generating revenue for 65% of the time. Suddenly, your revenue looks very different. And this is why successful barge operators don't just ask, "How much can this vessel earn?" They ask, "How many days per year can I keep this asset productive?" Because a $3 million vessel sitting at the dock isn't a $3 million business. It's a very expensive parking spot. Then there's insurance. You're operating a massive vessel carrying valuable cargo. An accident can create enormous financial damage, so insurance becomes an important part of the business. Then there are inspections, environmental requirements, safety regulations, registration, licensing, and compliance costs. These expenses aren't optional. You can't simply decide, "I'm going to skip maintenance this year and increase my profit." The industry doesn't work that way. The vessel has to meet the required standards. And that's one reason why owning a commercial vessel requires significantly more capital than many people expect. Let's imagine you purchase a used commercial barge and build a business around it. We'll use simplified numbers because actual economics vary dramatically, depending on the vessel, route, cargo, and contract. Suppose your operation generates around $2 million in annual revenue. Now subtract your major costs: fuel and transportation, $350,000. Crew and labor, $300,000. Maintenance and repairs, $250,000. Insurance, inspections, and regulatory expenses, $150,000. Docking, administration, and other overhead, $150,000. That's already $1.2 million in expenses. And we haven't even considered financing. If you borrowed money to purchase the vessel, debt payments can take another significant portion of your cash flow. Let's say that brings total annual costs to approximately $1.5 million. That leaves roughly $500,000. Now that sounds much better. But there's another question. Not necessarily. This is where people often misunderstand businesses with expensive assets. You might have $500,000 left after operating expenses and debt service. But you still need to think about capital expenditures. Eventually, that vessel will require major refurbishment. You may need to replace expensive equipment. You may need to upgrade systems. And eventually, the vessel itself will become less valuable. So part of that cash flow needs to be reserved for the future. This means the owner can't simply take every dollar left over and spend it. Some of it has to stay inside the business. So what separates a profitable barge operator from an unprofitable one? It's not simply owning a bigger vessel. It's contracts, utilization, cost control, and route economics. A barge with predictable customers can be extremely valuable. Imagine you have a long-term contract with a company that needs thousands of tons of material moved every month. Now you have predictable demand, you can plan your routes, you can schedule maintenance, you can keep the vessel working, and you can spread your fixed costs over more revenue-generating days. That's when the economics start becoming attractive. But there's one risk that can completely change the equation: demand. If cargo volumes fall, your vessel doesn't magically become cheaper. Your financing payment is still there, insurance is still there, maintenance is still there, and the vessel is still sitting in the water. That's why shipping and marine transportation businesses can be extremely cyclical. When demand is strong, vessel owners can make excellent returns. When demand falls, the same asset can become a financial burden. So, is owning a barge a good business? It can be. But it's definitely not as simple as buying a boat and collecting money every time it moves. You're really buying a multi-million-dollar transportation asset that has to remain productive to justify its cost. The business makes money by moving huge quantities of cargo efficiently. But fuel, labor, maintenance, insurance, financing, regulations, and especially downtime can quickly eat into those revenues. And that's the strange economics of the barge business. The more efficiently you move steel, the more efficiently you can turn it into cash. But if that steel sits still, your expenses keep moving. And that's what makes owning a barge less about owning a boat and more about owning a highly leveraged transportation machine. And in this business, the most expensive thing you can own isn't a broken barge. It's a perfectly working barge with nothing to carry.